This is the Other 22 Hours podcast. Hey, and welcome to this week's episode of the Other 22 Hours podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Shafer-Haiss.
And I'm your other host, Michaela Anne, and we are on episode 118. And this week, we are having one of our special episodes featuring our conversation with Drew Thurlow.
Yeah, episode 111, we stepped across the aisle and had somebody from the industry join us to talk about creativity and sustaining a career from the other end of the spectrum. If you didn't check that out, it's episode 111 with J. Edward Keyes, who is the editorial director at Bandcamp. But more importantly, if you listen to episode 109, which was our conversation with Major Jackson, the poet and educator, we finally dipped our toes into AI. And after a long time, we realized, man, we need to have somebody at the table for this conversation. So enter Drew Thurlow. He has decades of experience in the industry. Disclaimer, Michaela and Drew met while working at Nonesuch. 2008, they met. Drew worked in the marketing department as well as doing some A&R before he moved on to be the director of artist partnerships and brand relations at Pandora. Basically, as he likes to say, he took the money that Pandora made and redistributed it back to artists by putting on events and all of that. If you guys ever went to the Pandora showcase at South by Southwest, he did stuff like that. And from there, he went on to be the senior VP of A&R at Sony Masterworks. And now he is on his own, working independently as a consultant on AI, specifically for companies such as Rock Nation. He's writing a book on that. He is a consultant for a music tech investment firm that focuses on a lot of technology around AI. And he just recently started a podcast called Lone Wolf Community Podcast, which is industry and tech-centered conversations, which is really a great listen. So make sure to check that out.
Yeah, and this was a really in-depth conversation, but also kind of felt like we just barely scratched the surface. So we'll probably have him back on to keep us updated, as we know this stuff is rapidly changing. We talked about where we are right now in terms of being music creators and AI, what it can do, what it can't do. And we talked about legislation and legal protections and lawsuits that are happening, and also talked about the upside. There's a lot of kind of fear out there about AI and it's going to take all of our jobs and make musicians obsolete. And Drew talked about some of the reasons that he would say we can use AI as a tool and that there's an upside to all of this.
I was kind of convinced. I'm not like fully sold. I'm definitely still scared and angry, but I'm a little more at ease after talking to Drew a little bit.
I came away with a feeling of informed optimism because also at the end of the day, it sucks just living in perpetual fear and anxiety. So yep. Let's just keep making music and see how we can hopefully make the best of this.
Speaking of making the best of this, we invite you into our community so we can make the best of these conversations. And we do that over on our Patreon community. People get advance notice of our guests. There are ever-changing, ever-evolving, ever-coming and going topics that we talk about. But most importantly, it is the sole way that you can financially support the production of this show, which is quite the undertaking, even with a small show like ours. So if you would like to offset your moral conundrum of using AI by supporting actual artists making actual art, please head to the link in our show notes and support us at our Patreon.
And if you are a visual person, this and all of our past conversations are available on YouTube. But without further ado, here is our conversation with Drew Thurlow.
We wanted to have you on here with your myriad history in the industry, but we had one conversation with Major Jackson, who is like an incredibly renowned poet. He's the head of the creative writing department at Vanderbilt. And we found ourselves talking about AI for the first time in 3 years of this show. And so immediately after, I was like, we need to have Drew on here because we can't pretend that AI is not part of what's coming down the pike for us and not a big part of like creativity these days.
It's funny how I kind of got into this a couple of years ago. It's just out of curiosity. And now it's all anyone wants to talk to me about.
From the outside, like you planted the flag and you're like, hey, I kind of have an idea what's going on here. At least you're on top of the crazy bi-weekly developments. I'd try to not be like an ostrich with my head in the sand, but I have no idea. I know that like Timbaland started an AI record label. That's like where I'm at.
Yeah, and I'm kind of more of put my head in the sand of like, well, I'm just going to keep doing what I do. But I realize, honestly, Drew, from seeing stuff that you guys have been posting from the Lone Wolves community, of like, oh, what are the legal ways that this is going to impact us, whether we like it or not, as copyright holders, as writers, and then some of the more practical stuff, and even like hypothesizing about how it might change us personally and creatively. But if you can kind of share like what your background is that led you to being interested in this and kind of this becoming a major part of your work today.
Yeah. I think it's because I had like an extraordinary experience at Pandora when I was the first music person that the company hired. And I remember I had just left Nonesuch and we were super nerdy about our music tastes, obviously. And for those who don't know, Michaela and I worked together at Nonesuch. And I took the elevator the first day up when I was starting my first day at Pandora, and I met a guy who was like, oh, you're new here, right? I haven't seen you in the office. I'm like, yeah, first day. He's like, yeah, I was just at like a Tiesto show last night. And I was like, oh my God, I have to work with someone who likes Tiesto? Like, this is going to be terrible. Like, what is this?
What am I doing?
Turns out I had like an extraordinary 6 years there. And I got to work with music I cared about, certainly, but a lot that I didn't. But it was because it was like a forefront of all this new way of streaming. We pioneered a lot of what we take for granted now in DSPs and the way brand partnerships works with artists now. And I felt really good about the advertising dollars I was steering into artist pockets through content and events that we were doing. And then I left there and I went to Sony. Sony wanted to kind of create a Nonesuch at Sony. So I was hired to be the senior vice president of A&R at Sony Masterworks. I spent 5.5 years there and I just hated it. It was like everything that modern music is not. And part of it is not anyone's fault. It's just the way that labels and commercial music industry works these days. But when I decided I was leaving Sony, it kind of coincided with this AI explosion. And I think when ChatGPT launched, I think everyone was like, oh, yeah, this is like internet level disruption. And I've bought into it. So I started writing about it and thinking about it. And there weren't many people who had worked in the music industry for as long as I had as an artist and recording for labels and then working at labels and then at a DSP who had the perspective on what this could mean. So I got a book deal pretty quickly. So my book about music and AI is coming out in March. I write for Billboard about it, and I have a bunch of clients. I consult in the space. I now have a music tech investment fund where we invest in music tech startups, a lot of them with AI tools and assists. So it's just been really interesting. And as much as I follow this stuff, even once a week, I'm like, oh shit, this is fucking crazy. So it's a lot. But I will say, my favorite quote is from the woman who runs the Motion Picture Association of America, who said, everyone is so freaked out by AI, but no one's really sure what to be freaked out about. My thesis on this whole thing is actually pretty optimistic for artists and the industry. And we can talk about why. But this is certainly a pretty big change in technology and how creation happens and how consumers are going to listen to music. But it's also like in a lot of ways more the same. So we can start piece by piece and address like what you're hearing in your community and like what you're curious about. And there's certain things that we definitely know for sure. And there's certain things that we can kind of game theory out that we don't know.
I know it's a big question, but let's just start at square one. Like, where are we right now with AI? What can it do and what can it not do? Like in a music space. This episode will come out in August, so it'll probably be slightly behind at that point. Yeah. But, you know, what's happening right now is like Velvet Sundown is blowing up as like
oh my God.
The retro 70s AI band on Spotify.
Can we just not with that shit? The only reason why that's a story is because everyone is like chattering about it. There is a lot of AI generated music out there. So what can it do? It can make music pretty well. It can make recordings pretty well. And you know how, I consider myself a member of the Americana community. I was Americana Music Association board member for a long time. And when AI started really becoming kind of a consumer tool, you couldn't really make acoustic guitar sounds very well. And I remember reassuring some acoustic artists that like, don't worry, like this is going to be a while. And then like 6 weeks later, that wasn't true anymore. So yes, AI can make really good, quote unquote, musical passages or even songs. But we have a lot of evidence now, more than 2 years into this, that like consumers don't want it and nobody likes it. And the Velvet Sundown or whatever they're called is not a real thing. It's like they have all these followers because people are curious about it and they're reading about it. Of the 250 million songs that are now on streaming services, I estimate 30 million of them are AI generated, and they are like 0.33% of the royalty pool. It's a rounding error. No one is listening to this shit. So if you're an artist who's making real music, we can pretty much bet that even though these services can make good sounding songs and musical passages, without the context of art or human attached to it, fans have expressed no interest in it. And that has not changed Could, but right now that has not changed.
Whether that's true or not, what about just the fact that tech companies that are making the AI generated music, or corporate entity or business, whatever, I can't imagine real musicians making AI music. Your motivation has to be to make money, right? Because it's not like the experience of creating music and sharing it with the world. It's just adding to the saturation and the noise and the royalty pool, because listeners also might not understand that, like, the way Spotify works is that it's not fraction of a penny for fraction of a penny, like translated royalties, that all the royalties go into a pool and then they divide it up among every single artist. And if you get less than 1,000 listens, you never get paid out. It's not an even transaction. So, like, should that be a concern for working artists who are already facing unjust royalty practices and feeling like, how are we ever going to make money fairly from our music?
Oh, you want to get paid for your music, Michaela? Oh, I'm sorry. No, that's a fair point. That also has nothing to do with AI as far as I'm concerned. I'm a little older than you guys. I came up when, in order to make music in the late 90s and early 2000s, you had to like get together with a group of people and spend a lot of money recording music. Now anyone can download a free software at GarageBand. And I mean, the sheer amount of music in the world has been increasing exponentially before AI. Mm-hmm. And that democratization of creation tools, AI is going to supercharge it. But I think that fundamental issue that you brought up is not necessarily just because of AI. And that's when I say that AI is kind of a continuation of what's already happening. Like, it's a continuation of all that. I am an unabashed proponent and fan of streaming. I came up during the file sharing era. I had a contract with Atlantic Records that got shelved. I have a publishing deal with Rough Trade. I never made any money. And I didn't deserve it, as I didn't put the time into it to be an artist. But there are tens of thousands of people. I forget the latest stat, but there's like something like 150,000 artists now making a minimum of like $100,000 a year off their music. And that figure was like 1,000 20 years ago. I don't think it's Spotify's fault. I don't think it's AI's fault that there are way more people trying to make music now than ever before. And it's a lot easier to make music before. And as an individual artist, individual person like you, Michaela, and you, Aaron, like, yeah, it sucks. There's a lot more competition. But I don't know that that's AI's fault. And the overarching benefit is that there's a lot more people like you who are making a living.
For me, and like what I hear is, yes, there are more and more people making music, you know, as you said, the democratization, easy access to DAWs and tools and things like Splice and sample libraries and all of that. But it still took like some level of knowledge and understanding of like the tools, where like, you know, my understanding with AI is you basically just need to be able to write a sentence. And like, you can get into like, okay, the artistry, especially I brought up Timbaland before. So now you have like platinum selling, Grammy winning producers that are using AI as a tool and sharpening like the input and all of that. The bar for entry now is even lower. You know, I've heard people talk about like loop doctors forever that just like pile on loops and all of that. But like, there's still like some kind of artistry to that.
Well, I mean, I think you have to think about Timbaland as like a business person and not an artist.
For sure.
He's one of the main investors in Suno. Mm-hmm. And that is why he started this record label using Suno. But that goes back to my earlier point. Everything you're talking about is true philosophically, but in practice, what we're seeing is like no one's listening to this shit. I had this experience a little while ago where I was playing something in my iTunes library. I don't know why. And this song came on and the guitar sound was like so sick. It was like mid-scooped in the right way and it had like just enough gain. And I'm like, it sounds like a tube screamer, maybe a Strat or a tube screamer. And I'm like, there's no way the AI can make this like unbelievably great guitar sound. And then I looked at the track and it was from Udio. And I was like, oh shit. Like,
here we are.
Oh God, this is like, I was completely fooled as someone who like considers himself an expert in this. I had it downloaded for another reason, but like no one is listening to this shit. I know you're worried about the royalty pool, Michaela, but like this stuff is not really being factored into the royalty pool. As I said, the latest stats are in Spotify, it's about 1/3%. On Deezer claims it's about 0.5%. It's a rounding error. It's not taking away from real artists yet.
What about the whole playlist world? In my world and peers, like a lot of what everyone's vying for is playlisting. And everybody's lamenting the change of playlisting, how it used to be specific people. People knew who it was, who was running the Americana one. And you'd like, it was very curated. And now it's, you know, more algorithm fed. And people are like, I was getting 20 million streams on a song because I got a great playlist and now I can't get on any playlists. What if all those playlists are just AI generated music because people are more and more doing passive listening rather than getting invested in music that they love and picking the songs that they like?
So far, the DSPs are not incentivized to playlist AI-generated music.
Okay.
Consumers don't like it. We can talk about the legal stuff too, because that's important. But there's laws now in the EU, and they're becoming here, that AI-generated, wholly generated content has to be watermarked as such. And Spotify is not incentivized to playlist AI music, and it's not. It's really, that's again, it's such a small percent of the royalty pool. Streaming has its own issues. As much as I'm a fan of streaming, the fact that we've outsourced our entire relationship from artists to fans to streaming is a mistake. And there's a lot of activity in that area about how to monetize your fans better and how to reward super fans more than just a streaming subscription. So we need to fix that, but that's not an AI issue. We relied on streaming too much, too long is the only way to make money off recorded music.
I don't know the back end of like the deals that major labels made with streaming. You and I worked at Nonesuch, and what year did you start at Nonesuch?
2005.
Okay, so I started working full-time 2009, but I was an intern the year before when I was in college, and I left in 2011. And I feel like even my short stay there, we were constantly hearing about the way things were and how it was almost like being pulled into streaming. And Nonesuch is a specific place because they treasure like classical music, the avant-garde, a lot of stuff that's not super mainstream. But it felt like we were being pulled into the new era of the music industry, kind of like kicking and screaming. But also because a lot of the older executives who had been there had been enjoying the benefits of the 90s, and budgets were bigger. Their incomes were bigger, I'm assuming. I don't actually know that stuff. So I feel like now in 2026, and not being on the label side, but having my own record label deals for my music and trying to like continually build a livelihood off of my music as an artist, it feels like we're now in another transition. And it's going to be like, who's going to be pulled into it kicking and screaming, and who's going to be smart about how to adapt. And just feeling more and more as a musician and an artist, you're constantly at the mercy of the changing platforms. And you're having to spend your time creating your art and trying to evolve as an artist, and also pivoting and maneuvering and changing and learning and adapting what is the platform and the way that we share our art.
That's a good thing to think about. And I also think we have to forget about the way it was, because it's like so not relevant anymore. I advise these like venture capital guys and these private equity guys in the music industry, and they always are like wanting to ask about what it was like then, now what it's like now. And I'm like, it was just different. Like, you were manufacturing and distributing a physical product on a truck to a retail store, and now it's like a media business. And this is where I'm like a proponent of AI. I'm also kind of a fatalist, like, guys, it's here. Like, this is not going away.
Yeah, the box is open.
It is what it is. But at the same time, like, the recorded music industry and like the idea of an artist writing songs and recording them is like such a new phenomenon. And for so long, the companies who were gatekeepers who like withheld that. And I'm like, I'm happy. People should have access to creative tools. For 60,000 years, the only way you could hear music was to make it yourself. And a lot of this is informed by like my book research, which delves a lot into this history. But like the whole idea of a recorded music industry where an artist was get paid well, that's not even like an early 20th century thing. That's like a 1960s to forward thing. So now all these people are going to have access to these creative tools. Cool. That doesn't mean that artists and rights holders shouldn't be compensated, especially if the training data is using their work. But like, if you're making real art for fans, then thinking about where they live and how they consume it and how you can get value from them is really important. And it's different for every genre. And like what I would advise like a K-pop act and what I would advise you as an Americana songwriter are like really different. Which is why these like super fan apps are a tough thesis, because like it's being a super fan by definition is being unique. So your first 100 fans are like really valuable to you and important to you. And you're right, like we're all being forced to reinvent this stuff like constantly, and it's exhausting. And I know you wish you could just focus on your music and your art and your songwriting and that be enough, but like it's just not, and that's just the way it is, and it sucks.
We're at a point now where we're like, there's two other branches of this that I want to touch on. One is it as a tool, as a creative tool. How can we incorporate it into what we do? A lot of our listeners are also kind of in the Americana community. So like very like band in a room, Love Music, the band, you know? You just said two things that make me kind of want to go another direction, which is rights holders and training data. So I kind of want to talk on the legal end, because we just kind of covered what it can do. So I kind of want to talk about like what's going on legally. What are the fights to like protect us? I know that like this wonderful, wonderful budget bill that just passed.
Beautiful. It's big and beautiful.
One of the few bright spots in the thing was there was a stipulation in there that you couldn't pass laws to regulate AI for the next 10 years, which is ridiculous. That's like game over. For those that aren't aware, that was shot down in the Senate like 99-1. I don't know who the one person is, but what the fuck?
Yeah.
So that's a plus. On that, like, where are we legally, like, in the music sense? As far as I know, you can't copyright fully AI music, right? It needs human tweaking to be able to copyright.
Yeah. There's a couple things that we know for sure. Number one, I really try to steer people away from the idea that there's an outcome of a situation and that means something. Because like, no, it's a mistake to put a sentence in that bill that allowed state governments not to regulate AI for 10 years. But we really don't know the outcome of this stuff. So right now, there's about 42 lawsuits in the United States, more in Europe, that are trying to answer the question, can I take anyone's data that's copyrighted and protected and owned? Can I train an AI model on it? And is that fair use? And only 3 of the lawsuits are involved around music. Well, most of them are involved journalism and books. But that is the big question of this year. What is training data? How protected should it be? And then we have all different, like, really complicated legal threads from there. Like, all right, so say it's fair use. Well, what happens if the output makes money? Does that mean that like the rights holder shouldn't be remunerated? If they are, does the tech exist to track that and pay that back? How do we decide how to weigh a piece of training data in an output? There was an interesting couple of cases 2 weeks ago on the book side. One was against an Anthropic and one was against Meta. One was a book publisher, one was a series of authors. And they actually ruled that training data is fair use. Like, you can take the history of recorded music and you can train it on a model and it's fair use. That's like at least what one of the judges decided. But the way you get it matters. And what these companies were doing were scraping the internet and creating this shadow library of content. And that was illegal. And now there's going to be a judgment, a jury case against Anthropic. And if you follow the letter of the law at $150,000 per infraction, Anthropic could be fined up $1.5 trillion.
Oh my!
Now, obviously, like, no one's gonna find someone like a third of the U.S.'s GDP in a lawsuit. But I think it's also really important for everyone to take a step back and be like, training data, it probably is fair use, but like that doesn't necessarily mean what you think it could mean. So many historical examples in my book research. My favorite one is when the camera was invented and the first camera studio set up shop in Lower Manhattan, and then people could kind of like cheaply get photographs made. It was a common sentiment that painting was going to die. Like, why would you ever need to paint anything? Most painting back then was portraits. So why would you need it? And it's true that some portrait painters had their livelihoods disrupted by photography. But what photography did was like allowed Impressionism to become invented and flourish. I could go on and on about how in a music context, that was true when the phonograph and the gramophone were invented, and how people thought solitary music listening was going to make people crazy, which was like an accepted medical opinion of the American Medical Association in the 1920s and 30s. So taking everything from a bird's eye view, the fact that these tools exist, that we don't really know where the training data is going to lie, but there's probably going to have to be some kind of licensing. Also, like, the AI companies want to license it because they want to get the data in a form they can use it. And there's going to have to be some way to monitor the output, coupled with like, this is a cool tool. It's like a novelty, but fans don't really want it. They don't want like an avatar artist. They want a real human. I'm bullish on the upside. And I know artists talk a lot about like, oh, my music's going to be using training data and they're going to replace me. Like, there's a lot of upside. And let me just talk through a few of them. Number one, I think you use Pro Tools, right?
I use Logic myself, but I know Pro Tools.
So Logic Pro has like generative features built into it now. You can create a bass track, a keyboard track, and they've had a drum generator for a while. As someone who like was a session bass player for a little while, like, I don't know if that's scary or awesome, but you can create a full sounding band and get 70 different bass tracks in your DAW while you're creating seamlessly and not interrupting your workflow. Setting aside the implications of that for a minute on people who actually play the instrument. As a creator, that's pretty exciting. And you're going to be able to like mix and master like pretty well, pretty cheaply. And putting aside the fact that mixing engineers and mastering engineers, we're not going to need as many of them. Like that's really exciting for a creator. You're going to be able to create content for your short films, for your music with some of these really cool visual tools. Like I love these tools. Like I've been able to do so much in my business. I've had so many book proposals, coffee table book proposals. I've made content. Like it's awesome. And there's things coming down the line where you're going to be able to like to sell subscriptions. And I fully believe this to fans that want to like remix and reimagine your songs with these tools that are now in the hands of consumers. And that's going to be a money-making venture for you. And these are all tools that are like, it has to be managed and it has to be served the right way. And we have to slow walk it. But this is the future that I see. And I'm pretty optimistic about it.
Like you said earlier, it is like internet level disruption. And so one thing that we touch on a lot in this show is like the nearly universal feeling of whether it's based in fact, and more often than not, it's based in fear, that there's not enough pie to go around. There are limited resources for us as artists that have spent our lives practicing, learning, developing skills, developing taste, developing intuition, that there's like limited pie to sustain this life. To do it at a level, like you need to be able to make enough money to like spend a lot of time investigating, trying, failing, learning. That now like with AI and this like instantly not slowing your workflow, having 70 bass tracks, there's obviously and understandably a lot of fear around that. Like my reaction is like, oh, that's cool. It's like, it's a novelty. It's cool. When does that shift from being a novelty to being like, that's just what happens?
Well, it's a tool. I really fully believe that artists and the curation aspect of this really still matters. What you just said, like I could give you 15 examples of how technology has come along, how people were like freaked out, thought it was evil. I mean, not that long ago in the early 1980s when the polyphonic synth was invented, there was a real sentiment that wasn't music. It was a robot. People shouldn't use it to make music. It's like cheating. It's too easy. It's taking hands out of the classical pianists or the people who've really trained. And then like Peter Gabriel uses it and everyone's like, oh, well, if Peter Gabriel's into it, then it must be fine. And now like show me a pop song that doesn't have a polyphonic synth in it. Like so many examples of that. So you still need to create something that people want to hear. And all of that you've learned and done and experienced still matters. You're just going to be doing it a lot faster, a lot cheaply. And this is just more of the continuation. Like, I don't think that when you guys were growing up and the internet started, you saw that as a threat, right? You saw that as opportunity.
Yeah.
The people that we worked for at None Such saw that as a threat. My theory was they're in love with the record business as much as records. They love the business. They love the tradition of it, the systems of it. And those are things that are going away now. And I'm very cognizant that, like, especially you, Michaela, who make Americana music, it's a very different community than like EDM or pop music. I think in some ways it's good, in some ways it's bad. I think it's good because a lot of your fans and the fan base of the music that we both love is for people that want something a little bit more acoustic and authentic and genuine. And I wouldn't say that the Americana music fans and artists are necessarily like at the forefront of technology the way that like EDM DJs are, who like went wild over NFTs.
Yeah. And also, I mean, that's where kind of my comfort lies, is that I think there will always be a population of people who just aren't interested and don't want it. Those are my people, because I'm not interested in technology. Like, I play the acoustic guitar. I've like dabbled with the electric at times, and I'm like, but I don't like gear because I'm a songwriter. Like, I just like songs and singing. And the fans that I've gotten to know and what has sustained my career thus far is the real grassroots, like human to human connection. And I don't think that's only for small niche communities, because I also see it on the most massive level with an artist like Taylor Swift. Her billions of fans are fans of her music, but they're also fans of her and invested in her relationships and her stories and her as the human. And even like as a massive megastar, that she's known for connecting with fans and even invited fans to like private parties in her house. You know, so I think that there will always be a population of people who it won't be overtaking their lives, and maybe we won't even be aware of the way that AI tools will infiltrate. I think of it almost like as a songwriter, because we did talk about how it could help on the creative front, not on the technology side of creating, but actually on like the musical writing side. And I've kind of always just been like, why would you use that if you really care about the process of writing? But then I'm like, okay, how often do I go to a rhyming dictionary because I
totally.
can't think of a rhyme. And I want some word suggestions. 10, 15 years from now, will it feel like that's how I'm like, oh, I can't think of a line. All right, I'm going to go to AI. Maybe that will feel more acceptable.
Yeah, I mean, I think it will. First of all, to go back to what you said about Taylor Swift, that is everyone's relationship to music that they love. That's not just Taylor Swift's. I really want to hammer this point home. Like the archetype of the artist matters, and the people's relationship to the context and the stories and the person matters so much. That's why I keep saying that what percent of the royalty pool is AI, because like no one wants this shit. I mean, the point of technology is to be a tool and to be seamless and in the background. And I think as people get more comfortable with this and fans get more comfortable with this, a perfect example is like Riverside. You use AI features in this podcast recording. It's seamless. It's behind the background. I don't think it's controversial. I don't think you have a problem, Michaela, using it. It's going to slowly seep into these tools that are going to become natural. And I guarantee that you're going to sit down in front of a DAW one day. And when I heard that really great guitar sound on Udio, it was like inspiring. I was like, I want to sample that. Just think of it as a tool. It's a hypercharged tool, but it's a tool just like any other piece of technology.
My fear just keeps going back to the shadow side of democratization. It doesn't take much data to understand that back in the 50s, 60s, when it took a record label with a budget to get an artist in the studio to record something, the baseline, like median level of quality was much higher than what's made today, where anybody with GarageBand can put something out. And it's like, as an enjoyer of art in general and high quality art, I want the baseline of the art that's being made to go up. And, to me, like generative AI, the word generative is such a great marketing word because it's not generative, it's regurgitative, if you ask me. It's not creating new music, it's just regurgitating everything that's already eaten. And yes, you can argue that like us as artists, music isn't made in a vacuum. I'm regurgitating songs that I've heard in the past and all of that. But like I can make a mistake. I can be recording something and like a mic can be resting on an amp. Take Sam Phillips from Sun Studios. Like the first recorded fuzz guitar tone he recorded, and that's because the amp fell off the back of a truck on the way to a session and the speaker broke and they plugged it in and goes, cool. And they
I thought
used
he poked holes in it.
Maybe that's what it is. But same deal. You know what I mean? Like it was a mistake and they went with it. How does AI make mistakes that stumble upon like happy accidents?
Why are you assuming, number one, the human's outside of the loop on that process? And number two, I mean, there's this whole thing on hallucinations. I mean, I love those videos on like Instagram and TikTok of like really bad AI of like people crashing cars and screaming and like a gorilla interviewing people at a supermarket. And like, it's all fucking weird and broken and hallucinating. And what you just described, like, I get it, but it's also like, as an artist, you're not out of the loop. You're using filters in interesting ways. But look at how autotune has been employed over the last 20 years. This is a tool. The happy accidents are very much part of the creative process. And that won't go away.
Yeah, and that makes me think of like with recording, we can say like the technology's gotten so good that you don't have to be physically that great of a singer to sound good on a recording. And that can feel kind of like insulting. But then I've read quotes from Linda Ronstadt where she's like, oh, I won't even listen to my old recordings because I did that in one take and I feel like I could have done it better. And like what I would give to have today's technology for back then, how much better Linda Ronstadt could have sounded. But like, thank God as a fan, that wasn't at disposal.
Yeah,
because
I know. Yeah. Well, every single era is a function of the technology. Like why are pop songs 3.5 minutes? Not because there's some innate universal need for humans to hear music in that context. And the other thing that I think is really funny about demonizing AI is like, if you've ever spent any time in like a major pop recording session, and I don't want to pick on anyone, Katy Perry, but like sitting through that shit is like every fucking thing is sampled and focus grouped to death. She comes in, she does a top line, they synthesize that sound signal until it's barely a human voice anymore. And then like it's focus grouped to death even more. And like, then they print it and they send it to the label. Like, what's the difference between that and generative AI? Like, is there a difference?
I mean, that's a good point.
I mean, there's clearly a difference, right? But like, why are we holding up the old way as some like golden standard? Whereas like in certain contexts where like generative is like not any different to me.
So if we have this rapidly evolving, progressing technology that has the potential to be really wonderful in a lot of ways, also has the potential to be destructive. I have like equal faith in humanity that a lot of people want connection and staying rooted in the natural world and who we are as humans and loving each other and all this stuff. And I also have equal faith that people are destroyed by greed and power. I just started reading Ezra Klein's book, Abundance, and it like opens with this like imaginative future if we can actually use all this stuff for good. So my question to you is there anything that the regular people, the musicians, the music fans, that we can do to try and help steer without feeling helpless and like the big corporate entities are leading the way and they're going to do what they're going to do?
Be educated on these tools a little bit. Like they're not scary and you might like them and you might find them really great uses in your workflow. Number two, it's like to the extent you can influence like your policymakers, I really do think that what the EU has done has been a great model. The EU AI Act phased in over 4 years and it has 4 levels of AI interruption from benign to severe. And there's like crazy helpful regulatory power to make sure that it's being used for good and that the training data is like diverse. And it's a good bill. It's a good law to the extent that we need the same one here. And I really am. This is kind of a nonpartisan issue. The other stuff that's touched on this, like the CHIPS Act and some of the other kind of technology bills, they've really been nonpartisan. Like I think people are taking this seriously.
Yeah. We're in Nashville. I know a lot of our listeners are around here. Like Marsha Blackburn is our senator. She's not awesome on so many levels, but what she is really awesome on is AI and protecting artists' rights.
She's introduced the main bill.
Yeah, music is a multi-billion-dollar industry in Tennessee, but she actually it's maybe the one thing that she's on the right side of, I think.
Yeah. It's funny. When I was at Pandora, I did a lot of work with Jason Chaffetz. He's like at Fox Talking Head now. He was a congressman in the Bay Area. We did a lot legislation around streaming and copyright laws like 10 years ago. And I just remember being like, man, this fucking guy and I agree on nothing. But he's on the right side of this issue. It's weird.
Yeah. On that, you mentioned one thing to do is to get involved and use these technologies. I remember this was early last year, probably. Justin Traynor, the massive songwriter that's written or had credit on 80% of the number ones in the last decade. He got involved really early on with, I'm not sure which company, it was an AI, and sat on a panel of developing specifically generative music AI. And he released a whole statement on it. He's like, listen, we need representation at the table. This is coming. The box is open. It's better that we are involved. And I think that applies to everybody, not just massive number one songwriters. It's get involved, share the input.
There's ethically sourced tools out there. Suno and Udio get all the attention because they raised all the money and they're being sued by the RIAA. But there's plenty of other generative AI tools out there that are ethically sourced, helpful, licensing music properly, giving people the ability to opt out. And then on the marketing and release side, this is another podcast, but I can talk through all the ways that independent musicians should be using these tools for marketing and distribution and royalty collection and box royalty finding and catalog management.
I'm just going to have a consulting call with you separately.
Yeah, no, seriously. Totally. No, I will.
Yeah.
I charge Rock Nation to do it, but I'll do it for you for free.
Hey, deal.
Benefits of being a cubicle neighbors. So I have stayed away from AI and ChatGPT and everything because ignorance and fear. And what are the energy and environmental consequences of using AI and ChatGPT?
I knew that would come up. I was betting Aaron would ask that question because he's the hippie.
Busted.
Yeah, anyway, the whole entire AI ecosystem in the world is roughly equivalent to the global aviation climate impact. So it's a lot. It's not good. However, one of the things that AI has over the global flight impact is that the technology is really good at becoming efficient. And in fact, AI is starting to be deployed in places like server farms and massive energy systems and finding efficiencies to a great effect. So if you model out how good this technology is getting and how it's getting, cheaper and better, kind of Moore's law, there will be a climate impact at some point. Hopefully it can be neutral or even positive. It's trending in the right direction, but I definitely don't want to gloss over the fact that yes, the AI is about as much of an emitter as the global flight industry.
Do you have any way of knowing, everybody says, oh, every question you ask ChatGPT is dumping out a bottle of water. Is that an equivalent with music? Every song you make is...
Oh, yeah, it's hard to know because The models aren't really open source and we don't really know, depending on the model. They also do things in the back end. Like not all ChatGPT models are the same. There's like DeepSeek, which is kind of a Chinese one built on top of it. Like there's like light models that use less. Someone out there knows that it's not me. We'll go do this again in a few months. There'll be a lot of difference. We'll probably have some like settlements in the lawsuits. We'll have a better idea of like where the legal lines are. That will inform the ethical lines, and there'll be a lot more to talk about.
Permanent correspondent. We got to check in with Drew in the field.
This segment producer. Yeah.
This is Drew's dream besides playing shaker on one of my records.
Yeah.
We got to make that happen soon, too, before AI replaces him on the shaker. So, All right, Drew. Thanks for taking your time, man.
It's been an honor to be on the Other 22 Hours podcast when I'm not burning the world on fire with my AI, running servers and queries just to ruin the internet. When I'm not doing that, the other 2 hours, I am talking to you guys. So I would love to come back.
Please do.
All right. Bye, guys.
See ya. Thank you to all of you who subscribe to our Patreon or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get our show. If you haven't subscribed yet, take a second to do that right now, and we'll see you back here next week.